Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rosemary. I'd like to welcome all of you. I have some special friends here today. Thank you for coming out and supporting the National Food Associates. I'd like to thank Sue also. She graced me with some beautiful Reiki treatments right before I came up here. I'd like to thank the Wallingford Library. My first time here, magnificent. I'm ready to move to Wallingford. It's a spectacular library, and I know my kids are up there in the children's section just enjoying themselves immensely. I'd like to dedicate this, my little talk here, to my mother. Without her inspiration, this talk would not be manifesting today. Throughout my life, she was a wonderful lady. She would always inspire a sense of curiosity about life. The unexamined life is not worth living, like Socrates, and that we should never just accept the conventional wisdom in life. And the moment someone says you can't do this, you can't do that, well, that's the time to stand up and really try to make a difference. And that's what occurred in the case of my mom's situation at Yale-New Haven Hospital, where she was given 48 hours to live by all of the pulmonologists, the ICU nurses, all of the medical staff in the medical intensive care unit at Yale. But I've tried to, and I'm going to speak to you as a layperson, because I was a layperson at this time. And so my mind is going to think that way, not how it has years later as I really understood what was going on and what I was doing. So to set the scene, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. I had been traveling for 6 years around the world as a nomad with a backpack, all through Asia and China and Nepal and Africa and the Middle East. And I had left a pretty good job at IBM Corporation, New York City, Westchester, Wall Street. I was about 34 years old. And I didn't want to just sit back and live the corporate life. I could see the progression to retirement. I said, there's got to be more. And I grew up as a military family, so I grew up in American Samoa and Hawaii and Japan, Taiwan. We traveled all the time through Asia, so I was exposed at a young age to many different cultures, many different ideas, many different diets. And there was always an itch inside of me that I don't want to go through life and not know what it's like to be in Tibet, or go through the Himalayas to Mount Everest, or wander through India and look at all the great foods and bazaars and not know what it's like to be in walking down the streets of Cairo or Damascus or Africa, or live in Paris for a while. So I took those 6 years off, and part of it was almost inspired a little bit by Weston Price, and that instead of just traveling with a backpack and having fun, I tried to look at all the different cultures, the diets, why different cultures were missing out on certain diseases, why other cultures had different diseases, what were they eating, and what were their challenges. And during that time, I was reading book after book after book, because natural medicine, holistic medicine was a tremendous hobby of mine. How can we be more competitive? How can we be stronger? How can we get our minds to work better? How can we have more energy, more endurance? How can we stay well? And how can we prevent premature aging? All of these interest me tremendously. Oh, okay. Can all you hear me? No. Okay, thanks. So every year I would come back. My parents, after a military career, their second careers at Yale University. My dad was an investment director at Yale. My mom managed the Yale language department, the Italian department. And after an exciting life, they retired in the town of Orange and started to not take care of themselves. Okay? No exercise, bad diets, smoking, drinking. And every time I'd come home for a couple of weeks, it really frustrated me, because I wasn't home long enough to try to do an intervention and say, come on, you've got to take care of yourself. You have to set an example as you age as parents for your children. And in this case, this is where parents can always be teaching no matter what age, because what they do in their senior years, in their retirement years, is going to affect generations all the way down the line. So I tried to urge them, but I was home for 2 weeks. So on this occasion, I was living in South Africa, Durban, right on the Indian Ocean, in the land of the Zulus, and learning about all the ancient Dutch medicine, the Boers, the English who had come in the 19th century, Zulu medicine, even the French Huguenots who came over 200 years before that. You know, they all had brought their traditional medicine to South Africa. So I was exploring that, but I also had a great job offer. international marketing, public relations with a top firm in South Africa, which was the continent for all intents and purposes. And the job offer was international market development for Durban, the city of Durban, which was the second largest city. I had just met Nelson Mandela. I had met the chiefs of the Zulu Nation. It was fantastic. I was excited. Let me get back, see my folks, pick up some of my belongings that I had stored in Orange, and then I'm back to the new career. Well, that was not to happen, and some of my belongings are still back in South Africa, and I've never returned. During the course of my 2 weeks back, and this is what changed my life, and my mother fell and broke her hip. And just to give you a perspective, 8 years, so you know the case study, and you can get a feel for the case study. 8 years previous, she had been in a car accident and shattered a hip. So that had made her a little bit disabled and weak. Before, she was very mobile, active. Now she's retired. And during the course of those 8 years, she had fallen a couple more times. Broken a femur, broken a tibia, thigh, and shin. Once again, not taking care of herself. Bad lifestyle habits, bad nutrition, getting weaker. So when she broke her hip, off to Yale-New Hospital she goes. Now I thought, okay, go to the hospital, get it fixed, go to rehab, I'm back in South Africa. Okay. But within days, she deteriorated rapidly after the surgery in the hospital, picking up infections. Next thing you know, she was intubated. She fought off 8 people who tried to intubate her. And I'll never forget it. She looked at me with these big beady eyes and she said to me, "Stop them. You're my son. I'm your mother. Stop them from this intubation." And I looked perplexed. I really didn't know what American hospital was all about. I had never spent more than an hour of my lifetime in an American hospital. I could tell you what a Chinese hospital's like, a Tibetan hospital, hospitals in Kathmandu, Africa, Paris, Moscow, Cairo, Istanbul, but I had no experience in what an American hospital was all about. So I looked at my mom, I looked at those big eyes, and she was beseeching me, and she said, "Stop them, don't let them do this." And I didn't know what to do. And then she turned to me and said, "What do doctors know?" What do doctors know? And that haunted me. As they took her into the room, 8 people strapped her down, and she was fighting like crazy. She was a tough lady. Her inner core was steel. So with the intubation, she started to decline faster. Next thing you know, she's in the medical intensive care unit. Now she's trached on life support, ventilator, constantly going down, down, down. All the blood chemistries that they measure a patient on were constantly declining, pretty soon unconscious. And we reached a point that the family meeting came. This is 3.5 weeks of a decline. It was very frustrating with my dad there. I'd take him down there, you know. They've been married 45, 46 years. And tough military officer, career naval commander, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, buried in Arlington. Tough guy, but, you know, good decorum. So we had our family meeting. All the doctors assembled, ICU nurses, veteran ICU nurses. And they said, "Look, we've tried everything. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more we can do. In our estimation, your mother may have no more than 2 days left to live. I'm sorry." It was difficult. So my dad accepted it. My sister was there. He went over, gave my mother a kiss goodbye, and they went home. By that evening, the funeral was planned. The music was planned. Everything was set in motion. Relatives contacted, people ready to fly in. As they went home and left the IC unit about 10:30 in the morning, I just stood there. And I want to tell you what I've been thinking for 3 weeks and my observations about American hospitals. Sorry if you can't see me all the way behind this pillar. But my observations about American hospitals, the paradigm of American medicine and the standard of care, and what I saw was completely missing in the care, and how I knew, based on the type of care my mother was getting and how they treat patients, they were right. She had no more than 2 days to live. Here's the situation, and Louis Pasteur was right. It's not the pathogen, it's not the germ, it's the interior. It's the interior. It's the inner terrain of the patient. So my mom came into the hospital on empty, malnourished. Now the diagnosis the diagnosis didn't mean that much to me. Adult respiratory distress syndrome for the nurses here. But to me, which basically is your respiratory system is shut down, no longer functioning, so you can't oxygenate any of the organs of the body. To me, my mom didn't have any of these things. She had immune starvation syndrome. Okay, I started making up my own terms of how I tried to visualize what was going on with an elderly patient. Her tank was empty, no nutrients. She comes in and has a trauma injury, and how do they treat a patient? They plaster them with all kinds of drugs. Those are immunosuppressive. I know I'm not against antibiotics, you need them in certain situations. But how do they, the way my mind works is you need to fortify the body. You need to supply it with a lot of nutriments and nutrients if you have a stress injury, trauma, illness, so that you can put the body in its own position to heal itself. And that's just basic common sense. So what did they give my mother? Just a few cans of Jevity every day, dead stuff in a can, liquid. If you gave it to your children, I assure you in a few months they'd be suffering in school. And then of course this is an inflammatory condition, so they plastered her with all kinds of prednisone, which is extremely immunosuppressive. And it's been shown in further studies it really does no good in this particular condition. So massive antibiotics, nothing working there. Massive immunosuppressive, steroids, prednisone, things of that nature, which depletes your vitamin D. I don't know if you know that, which is your immune function. And so I watched this and observed it, and I said, my goodness, how on earth can my mom survive? How can any senior survive in a situation like this? If you go into the hospital with a trauma injury and you're on empty, you need to have a system. You need to have a hospital or a standard of care in place where you take these patients and you have a procedure to fortify them and strengthen them so that they can survive a trauma injury or thrive, or else at minimum minimize the time they're in the hospital, give them a better chance for survival. So for years and years and years I've been studying natural medicine on my own. 6 years of traveling, that's a lot of time to have a few books around, to take off from life. And I had mastered Dr. Earl Mendel's 300-page vitamin Bible. I knew every page, every nutrient, every application. I read all of Linus Pauling's books, and articles, and I used to, over the years, and this is, again, why fate favors the prepared mind. I've been preparing myself without realizing it for this moment in time for years and years and years because I had an interest in learning about better ways to take care of yourself. I would read all the papers, I would read all the magazines, I cut out articles of vitamin C, immune system, vitamin B, D, whatever it was, I would be cutting out articles and filing them away. And back in the 80s, there wasn't much. You had about Prevention Magazine, Life Extension, Longevity, there wasn't much the way there is today. You didn't have this massive amount of internet to find out all this information rapidly and quickly. But I had books and files, and they were all in my parents' basement in Orange. And I had a great admiration for Linus Pauling. I thought next to Einstein, he was probably the greatest scientist of the 20th century. 2 Nobel Prizes, and he came close to 3, because he did a lot of the foundational work for Crick's and Watson on DNA, but he just didn't have the technology. Spectrometry, what's it called? Help me? Thank you. It wasn't available for him, or else maybe he would have gotten the 3rd Nobel Prize winner. But I was fascinated that someone like Linus Pauling spent the last 20 to 25 years of his life looking at natural nutrients and ways you can enhance the immune function dramatically and live a better life. Not just with vitamin C, and that's the concept of what he developed in 1968 called orthomolecular medicine, which means forget these RDAs, recommended daily allowances that we use in the United States. You see on the cereal boxes 100% RDA, and you think you're being covered. You think you're taking care of your kids well. Well, those RD are ridiculous. What they were designed, and few people know this, is they were designed in World War II, and how do you keep a guy in a foxhole, a soldier in a foxhole, from a pre-mortal condition? So you prevent scurvy. And so you associate 60 milligrams as 100%. You're not going to get scurvy, but are you going to be well? Particularly under stress and injury, and particularly when you get elderly, where you're not absorbing nutrients very well. You know, it declines dramatically, your absorption capacity. So, there I was in the intensive care unit. And I said, I've got to do something. I'm not going to let my mother die. Not under these conditions. There's no way she's going. But what do you do? You know, I wanted to do something there, and I wanted to bring my stuff in. You know, start bringing my things that I knew would help and work. So thank goodness for the nurses. Always go to the nurses, and I say, we have nurses, always respect the nurses. If you're not friends with the nurses, if you're not respectful with the nurses, you got no chance. And I learned this, you know, a lot of you will appreciate this, the namaste and everything like that. I've been in so many Buddhist countries, every time I saw the nurse, I would say, Most Honorable Mary, Most Honorable Nancy, Most Honorable Renee, thank you. How are you today? Namaste. So, very respectful in that respect. So I asked the nurse there, I said, what's the procedure here for bringing things in? And I explained my philosophy and situation, what I observed. And she didn't disagree with me. But I said, you know, I haven't been in an American hospital. I don't understand all these machines and things are clicking and bells and everything like that. How can I get some stuff into my mother besides this dumb, dead liquid cans that are ridiculous? She said, well, what do you have in mind? And so I started to explain that I would like to use vitamin C. I didn't want to scare anybody. And Hippocrates always said, go with the simplest thing first. So it wasn't going to be some kombucha or astragalus, echinacea, or, you know, they're not going to know it. You know, this is years ago. So vitamin C. So I said, how do you do this? How do you get things approved in this hospital? I've got to get my mom some stuff. She said, well, here, I have a suggestion for you. Go to the doctor, and I'll set up an appointment, you know, and tell him, Doctor, you've told us in our family there's nothing more you can do. There's nothing more you can do. So use these words. Doctor, what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose to try something? You've told me there's nothing more you can do. You've told me we've got 48 hours to go, and that's it. What do we have to lose? Vitamin C. How scary can that be? I mean, please. So, as my father was back in the house, they're planning the funeral arrangements and everything like that. I said, I need an immediate meeting with the doctor. Please set it up immediately. And she did. She was a great nurse. And I sat down in the family room, talked to the doctor and everything like that, and I guess I was a persuasive salesman. And I think he felt sorry for me. Said, oh God, well, okay, you know, we want to respect the family. Make them feel like they've done something, to give them closure. At least they tried something. So I explained the situation. I talked about Linus Pauling, its vitamin C, and how using it in higher doses can be extremely therapeutic. So he gave an okay. He said, okay, we'll try something. So I said, great. Now I'm kind of minimizing. It was a lot longer conversation than that. But for the sake of time, because I was really diplomatic and I was really firm and I wasn't going to leave that room without the sale, to put it that way, to really convince him that my mom, give her a chance. So he said, okay, take care of it with a nurse, you know, go and, you know. So I went in over to Edge of the Woods. Everyone knows where that is, Whaley Avenue. I got my vitamin C with a couple of what are called bioflavonoids, so it's a vitamin C-like compounds. Brought it back. Because you can't obviously bring it in opened or anything like that. Called pharmacy, talked to the ICU nurse. They're on 12-hour shift. Everybody was still there. And I said, okay, I'm ready to go. And they said, well, how much do you want us to give her? I said, I want 500 milligrams every 2 hours. That's 12 interventions a day around the cycle. 12,000 milligrams. So every 2 hours cycling vitamin C, 500 milligrams. Now, there's one thing about vitamin C. Many of you know this, but primates and humans have an evolutionary defect. We're missing the enzyme and lost the enzyme hundreds of thousands of years ago to produce our own vitamin C. Everyone else produces, you know, all the other species produce vitamin C. If you take a goat, for example, and you make an equivalent, 150-pound human being, they make about 2 grams of vitamin C a day, and under stress and injury, they make 7-fold that, to 14,000 milligrams. And this is the way the rest of the species are. Linus Pauling used to take 18 grams a day. That's Linus Pauling, genius. 18 grams a day. He attributed his length of life, adding it 12 to 20 years to his life and preventing most illness. Okay. So, you know, they said, okay, are you sure 12 times a day, vitamin C? 12 times, we're going to do this every 2 hours? I said, yes. Now, I think they thought this would only last a day or two, but let him feel good about it. So they implemented the protocol. That night I went home, and my dad's sitting around. Our next door neighbor came over, who was a cardiologist at Yale, a Dr. Drakonakis. He had spoken on our behalf to the whole ICU staff that afternoon and came back and confirmed the diagnosis as a personal friend and the prognosis. And to sit with my dad, have a glass of wine. My mom's name was Florence, and just reminisce about Florence as if she was already buried. So I come home, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, please God, I believe, I really believe. You know, my attitude was hold the line. If my mother's alive this second, the moment vitamin C starts going into those cells, which is a powerful immune booster and a powerful anti-inflammatory, it starts to activate the whole immune function when you get up into higher mega doses. I just knew if we could get it in time, because I felt the hourglass of time was slipping away. All those sand particles, how many did I have left? Were they wrong about 2 days? Maybe it's 1 day, maybe it's 12 hours. I got to move. But I felt the moment, by 4 o'clock that afternoon, the vitamin C started, we had a chance. I believed. But when I came home that night and they're, you know, reminiscing about my mother's life, and basically, you know, they had just finished the music playing for the funeral, I just kept quiet and I said, I better not say anything. You know, better not say anything. So the next day came, there's my mom, no change. Day 2 comes, 48 hours, okay, that's the time limit. No change. Day 3 comes. People started to assure me, okay, well this sometimes happens to patients, you know, you might see a little rally, people are shaking, you know, nurses know this. Starting to see just a little rally before they go. So I was assured, you know, that this is what I was witnessing. And day 3 finishes, and of course they're measuring blood gas levels, which is, you know, the process of oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, and things. My mom's were horrendous. But they improved a tiny bit, just a tiny bit. And to me that was a sign, just like before a storm, when everything is quiet and calm, you suddenly see that one little leaf move, and you know something might be coming. Day 4, a little improvement. Day 5, more of an improvement. People are looking around. She's still here. Day 6, more improvement. Day 7, more improvement. Now some people are feeling a little guilty and a little embarrassed for their prognosis. Blood gases are improving. My dad is like perplexed. People were supposed to have flown in, and the funeral was supposed to have taken place. But my mom's there, day 7, improving. Now she's unconscious, so there's no placebo effect or anything like that. She's unconscious. So I said, okay. What next? I'm saying to myself, okay, I've got nutrient number 1 involved. By the way, I got 15 things approved by the end of this. I'm not going to go into everything. 15 different things on the formulae I got approved over the course of several weeks. So I talked to the doctors and I said, okay, 7 days, this is improving my mother. I'd like to try the next intervention. Again, Hippocrates, keep it simple. I had been reading about what they were doing up at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard's Brigham and Women's Hospital, where they were having remarkable results with surgical patients, ICU patients, reducing infections by 40%, mortality, healing, and getting them out of the hospital across the board by implementing 30 grams a day of glutamine. Now, how many of you know glutamine? Have you heard of glutamine? Okay, wonderful. Glutamine is the most important protein or amino acid in our bodies. It comes in a powder. And so when I read all about this, and I said, wow, Brigham, and this is where hospitals vary all across the country. Talk to any traveling nurse. You're going to see different interventions around the country all the time. I said, wow, what a remarkable protein powder. I knew it from athletics, but I didn't know that you could use it in that kind of a dosage in a critical care situation. And what glutamine does, it's the main fuel for the immune function. It's your main protein fuel for the immune function. Remarkable. And I said, well, my mom doesn't have much of an immune function. And it raises, like vitamin C, and it raises something called glutathione. So anybody know glutathione? Okay, a few of you know. I've been doing nursing seminars at Yale for 12 years. Only a handful of people have heard of it, but I think it's perhaps the most important word in health and medicine, that word, glutathione. And this is our main immune and antioxidant system that protects all our cells of our body. Glutathione. It's called a tripeptide, and I said I'll speak like a layperson. That's three, if you picture a pearl, it's three proteins, or what are called amino acids, put together to form what's called a tripeptide, or glutathione. And the most important one of those three is called cysteine. Cysteine is found in chicken soup, by the way, and that's what Jewish penicillin, right? So I asked the doctors, and I brought in the information. I said, I better start bringing things in, because they don't even know what glutamine is. Nobody had ever heard of it there. And I said, well, it's good enough for Harvard. It should be good enough for Yale.
Good job.
You know, Eli's, Bulldog's got to be just as good as, the Crimson. So I looked at it and said, okay. They approved it. 15 grams BID, which is twice a day. So I got the glutamine going in. Wonderful. I got the C is working magic. We got the glutamine going in now. He's keeping it simple, showing the research, showing the studies, not trying to get fancy with any type of esoteric nutrients that are going to scare too many people. Because a lot of, the doctors start coming, where are your studies? Where are your studies? Where are your studies? So we got glutamine in on day 7. I was happy because I could see my mom improving. Started to open her eyes a little bit. Hadn't seen that in a long time. Okay. Number 3. I said, what next can I do with these doctors? Isn't it amazing we can use all these antibiotics to kill off all your intestinal bacteria and flora, but then it's not the standard of care to supplement massive probiotics to have a balance and harmony in the body? Isn't it obvious? Why isn't it done? If you're going to do one good with one harm, well, balance it, harmonize it. There's no reason this can't be done as the standard of care in any hospital in America. So there's my mom with all these yeast infections developing, yellow tongue, doing the nystatin and things like that, which, by the way, depletes a lot of B vitamins, crucial B vitamins for immune and neurological function. And so as they're doing the nystatin and things like that, I said, okay, I'd like to ask you, do you have probiotics here on the formulary? Okay, nobody knew what that word meant. Can I talk to the pharmacist, please, here? Pharmacist, I need beneficial bacteria, that stuff you find in yogurt. They said, no, we've never carried anything like that here. And they do now in some places, but they're really weak. So I said, well, I'd like to bring my own in because I explained the situation. I mean, doesn't this make sense? We should add little probiotics, beneficial bacteria, build it because it's crucial for your immune function. And it's crucial, 80% of our immune cells are formed in the gut. Many of you know that. It's crucial for immunity, and it's also crucial for absorbing nutrients. Okay? And I thought the little liquid junk they were giving my mother, as bad as it was even worse because she probably wasn't absorbing much of it. It's just dead stuff floating around in her body. So I brought in Kyolic. You know, there were not many brands to choose from, but I thought Kyolic, I didn't have to refrigerate it. And so we started beneficial bacteria. Let's get it in. Let's have it 4 hours away from the antibiotics. During this time, again, I was visualizing. Here are the visuals I had. You have a patient, my beloved mother, immune deficient, lots of inflammation, bacterial infections, drug-induced nutrient depletions, because these drugs wipe out a lot of the nutrients, natural nutrients in your body. I'll give an example in a moment. She was just sitting there deteriorating, patient's not moving, so all the muscle breakdown. And by the way, glutamine is also fantastic for preventing muscle breakdown. That's exactly when you have a patient and they start to go into muscle atrophy after 3 days. The glutamine is going from the muscle. It's so important to the vital organs, and that's where it's being transferred to. And the whole patient goes down, it becomes flabby and weak. So glutamine also does that. It has a lot of applications for so many things, anything within the intestines, intestinal permeability factor it's called. AA across America uses it because it shuts down sugar cravings. It also raises what's called GABA, which is your calming neurotransmitter, gamma-aminobutyric acid. Multiple applications with and the medical doctors up at Harvard all take about 8 grams a day, just as an anti-aging, so you know. 8 grams a day in a little powder, you put it in a little water, throw it right down. Great for you. Everyone should be on it. It also, one last thing, because we're leaving glutamine, I didn't want to forget it. It also is a natural producer of human growth hormone, which costs a lot of money for the athletes these days to secretly use that. So it's a wonderful thing. So the probiotics are in, they're going. You know, I'm trying to say, okay, we're getting muscle deterioration with the glutamine, we're getting the immune function, vitamin C, probiotics, glutamine, we're working on that. And, but we still have to work on, it's like being a chef in a way. You know, when you make some new meal, you've got 10, 15, 20 ingredients in it. So I felt, based on these criteria of immune function, nutrient depletion, inflammation going in the body, muscle deterioration, and oxygen flow. Not enough oxygen. The cells of the body needed lots of oxygen. What are some of the nutrients other nutrients I can start recommending and suggesting that are going to enhance all of those concepts I developed in my mind? And the other aspect too is, you know, my mom's body was pretty acidic, and trying to promote an alkaline environment in an ICU climate. Very challenging. So the next object was, I visualized this dead food in my mom's body, not absorbing. I looked at the fact that they take all these patients, they immediately put them on PPIs, you know, Prevacid, Prilosec, all these antacids. They're afraid of stress ulcers. But I said, why is it good to remove stomach acid? You've already lost a lot of your stomach acid by age 70, which my mother was. Don't you need that to protect your gut from germs and pathogens? Don't you need stomach acid to break down nutrients and foods and distribute them? Aren't you already compromised by age 70? Your normal enzyme system that you have at age 20 has gone down about 500% by 70. You don't have the same metabolism enzymes your pancreas secreting to break foods down, and now you've taken the acid away. And just as a comment on that, I attribute most of the C. difficile epidemic all across America, people dying from these type of interventions. 300% increase in C. diff for people on these antacids. 250% increase in pneumonia. This is all Journal of American Medical Association. I've discussed it with the doctors at St. Rafe's and things like that. Does that matter? You know, do you know what stomach acid is for? You can't just remove these things. And it also puts you at risk for malnutrition. Weak bones, osteoporosis, so it's really crucial. I said, okay, my mom's going to need some help. I can't put acid into her body right now or anything like that. But how about enzyme therapy? Enzyme therapy. So I brought in enzymes and I explained the enzymes. You know, your pancreas is weak. We need to help out digestion, absorption of nutrients, and also they can provide an anti-inflammatory effect. So I got pancreatin by Twin Labs company approved. I didn't know a lot about products then. I didn't know everything. I've been out in the bush for 6 years. So, you know, traveling. So we started enzyme therapy. So I knew the enzymes were going in and they're molecular spark plugs, they're moving things, they're activating things, things are digesting, anti-inflammatory. And from there I'll go into just, I'm not going to spend a lot of time to all the nutrients and things like that, but we could watch little by little with all the blood labs how things were changing. And then we'd have a doctor come in, you know, this is now, we're day 13, 14 into this with my mom improving. A doctor comes in and said, you better be careful about that vitamin C because it can cause kidney stones. I said, I'd rather have a kidney stone than a corpse. I just said, you gotta be kidding me. He said, where's your study that vitamin C work, you know, this and that. So every night I'd be running around Barnes and Nobles, anything, I have to find studies. Boy, I have to defend myself because a lot of people were starting to get a little worried about what's going on in the ICU unit. Hey, what's going on here? You know, people were looking at me very warily. I was, oh, you're from where? You just came from Africa? Who's this wild man who took over our ICU unit? Who let him do this? You know, people are starting to question me. How did this happen? This lady, it's making us look bad, I think a few people said.
That's right.
She had 48 hours, now she's living it, making us look bad. You know, so the main pulmonologist who had made the prognosis disappeared. We never saw him again. You know, because it's, I won't say what the associates organization is, but they replaced it. It's like a pinch hitter. Bring somebody in because it doesn't look good. As we proceeded with this, we're in week 2 and things are really looking good. The blood gas levels are really improving. And the respiratory specialists are saying, well, maybe we can start doing a little weaning trial. Your mom's on the life support ventilator. Maybe we can see if she's strong enough now that we can start to see if she can go off a little bit. So they started doing a weaning trial. Okay, 20 minutes. And good, 20 minutes for the day. My mom's alive, you know. Her eyes are open. You know, she's starting to look around. You know, what's going on here? And so I proceeded, I said, okay, let's get moving. Let's get aggressive. This stuff is working. You can see it. Let's start moving and adding nutrients really fast. So I want some zinc. Zinc is crucial to the immune function. Zinc plays a major role if you know where your thymus gland is. At birth, the thymus gland is bigger than your heart. At age 40, you can't find it on an x-ray. It starts disappearing, and it's crucial for producing thymolin, which is a hormone that helps produce a lot of our white blood T cells and a lot of other fancy different names and components to the immune function. So they said, look, get zinc in, let's go. 30 milligrams, 60 milligrams instead of the 4 milligrams, if you count these 4 or 5 Jevity cans that they were putting in every day, which is, you know, child's play. Child's play. Nobody's going to get well with just these RDAs. So we got zinc in. Okay. I said, have you guys checked vitamin B12? Isn't it B12 crucial for immune function, neurological function? Do you guys routinely check for B12? You should. Somebody check it. Very low, of course. And of course, when you're on these antacids and things like that, and they knock out B12. They deplete B12. That's why and B12, probably half the people with dementia and Alzheimer's, or a percentage of them, you could reverse it if you got their B12 up in time. Not only that, because of white blood cell count, red blood cell count, it's really crucial for oxygenation in the body. And what many people don't know is when you do a lab reading for B12, let's say the range is 200 to 900, if you're down below 500, to me, you're deficient. So a lesson to all of you, and this is where I come out of, you know, to the practitioner. When you get your B12, or everyone should have their B12 checked, make sure you get the number. Don't ever let anyone say you're normal, ever. You want to be 500 to 900 and above. And if it's not checked in time and there's not an intervention, you can cause permanent neurological damage. I mean, it's really big, even with kids too, so it's something you can do a lot about. So we got the B12 check, got the B12 injections, get that going in. I said, how about with inflammation, let's get some omega-3 oils. So I brought flaxseed oil in. They approved it. Tablespoon in the morning, tablespoon in the afternoon. Now we got the omega-3 oils going in. Now they're giving mucomist. You know, the mucomist or the nebulizer, things like that, cleanses the phlegm. And I don't know, most of you may know that when you're in the hospital. And mucomist is basically that cysteine I was talking about, which is a component of glutathione, cysteine. And I had read a lot about cysteine over the years, and it's N-acetylcysteine, we call it NAC. It's such a potent antioxidant, antiviral, and it does so many great things in the body in terms of raising glutathione. To give you an idea, because I said instead of just doing it in the lungs, let's start supplementing it throughout the body and getting lots, and it's very compatible and synergistic with vitamin C. Here are just a few things that about N-acetylcysteine. And I tell this to the nurses a lot. I said, you've all given N-acetylcysteine before as nurses in the hospital, anytime you do a nebulizer with mucomist. But it's in every emergency department in America. If a patient, and particularly a teenage girl, and the leading cause of death is, suicide by Tylenol. And what they have is N-acetylcysteine in an IV, and if your liver is shot, you're minutes or an hour away from dying, you put on an IV of that one antioxidant and it saves your liver and your life. N-acetylcysteine, it's fantastic. So, powerful antiviral, but it raises glutathione, this magical word, glutathione. So the Tylenol goes in and destroys glutathione or any of these toxins or poisons within minutes to an hour, and acetylcysteine saves your life and liver by raising glutathione. So again, my premise of raising glutathione throughout all the organs of our body. And as an aside, I see this with HIV patients. I mean, basically aging is HIV because your immune system is going down. Aging should be treated as a disease in which we understand the evolution of our lives, how we can intervene and do things about it. So N-acetylcysteine was crucial for raising glutathione, saving the liver. NASA sends our astronauts up into space on N-acetylcysteine supplements. You ever wonder, those astronauts, would you like to be with 10 people stuck in a room up in space for 10 days? Well, okay, they've got to do something. You cough, respiratory, things like that. You never hear about that. Colds, they put all the astronauts on N-acetylcysteine as an antiviral, antioxidant. It's fantastic. So let's get N-acetylcysteine in there and get it working. All right, coenzyme Q10. Now, a lot of people take coenzyme Q10. No one knew what I was talking about when I said this is another enzyme. Nobel Prize, again, what is that? I bring the material in. Nobel Prize was awarded to Pete Mitchell, Scottish researcher, in 1978 for this product. It's standard of care in Japan and has been since the 1970s. Coenzyme Q10. It's a molecular spark plug that activates energy, what's called ATP, in all of our cells, particularly our heart. And many of you know this, one of the problems with pharmaceutical medicine, again, is the depletion of nutrients. And you see this particularly with the cholesterol-lowering drugs, which to me are the biggest fraud ever perpetrated in the history of the human race. But when they, and if you have questions on that, just bring it up, because I'm really hot on that topic later. But by depleting coenzyme Q10, I mean, you've just basically removed and made this, like removing the spark plugs from your car and from your heart. But by adding it and putting extra coenzyme Q10, you can convey an enormous amount of ATP, or what's energy, for all the cells of your body. So we threw that in, boom! You could see the blood chemistry. You could see the blood, all of the blood gases. Everything started improving rapidly, much better. Okay. Now I'm really causing a lot of stress to a lot of people in the ICU unit. A doctor comes by because we had all these things lined up, and I had brought all this other stuff to get ready for my next what's next? And doctor started complaining. He said, what's going on here? This looks like my wife's kitchen. So, my mom is now off 8 hours a day, weaning trial. 20 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. You could see the improvement. The more we were putting the nutrients on an orthomolecular level, high dose of all of these nutrients going into the body, going into the cells. I could visualize it all. 8 hours, wow. From nothing to 8 hours now. So someone noticed that, well, we may have a little elevated liver enzymes, and of course it must be the vitamins. It's not the drugs. Never the drugs. It's always the vitamins, of course, right? Never the drugs. They don't affect the liver, kidneys. It must be, you know, vitamin C. So they stopped my program. They suspended it. They suspended the program. And in a way, I was really, I was besides myself. I said, you know what? It's a good thing they did, because it was an example to show people. 24 hours later, my mom couldn't do more than a few minutes off the ventilator. Collapsed. And now all the nurses are looking around, because they were a little skeptical but excited. We had 4 powerful nurses who actually took ownership for this program. This was exciting. We've never done anything like this in our career. Never. We've never seen anything like this, ever. And they started from being very skeptical to start coming around and feeling a sense of ownership. Something special is happening. We've never seen this in the history of our careers or even heard of it, that all of these nutrients are going in a critical care situation. And now we're watching, boom. You put them in, results, you take them off, collapse. So within 48 hours they resurrected the program, because I was making, you know, you're not respecting my family's wishes. Back to 8 hours. Now we're up to 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours. All right, so what else can we do? I added vitamin E with selenium, 2 powerful antiviral and immune boosters, and powerful immune boosters. Particularly, you know, selenium is just one of the most amazing nutrients, anti-cancer, antiviral. It's birth control for the HIV virus. It's such a powerful antiviral. Only no one wants to talk about it because the therapeutic dose costs $2.50 a month. So you can't make money, as usual. You can't make money on it. Same thing with N-acetylcysteine, by the way. I didn't tell you about Stanford University did a study with N-acetylcysteine, the mucomist, but they gave 4 grams a day to HIV patients over 4 years, no progression. And all the science, this was in National Academy of Sciences, Journal of American Medical Association. At the end of the study, the scientists and doctors at Stanford said, isn't it a shame that this isn't going anywhere? Because you can't make any money, you can't patent this stuff, nobody's going to do anything about it, and that's what we're sad about. And that's the state of, you know, that's the state of the art in American medicine, that you have all these wonderful nutrients that can protect us from illness and can help to complement the treatment of illness, but people either don't know about them and they're not talked about. So we continue on this program. My mom's up to 18 hours off the ventilator. Now they're out of bed. And all the nurses are coming by, because here's another observation. She had the best skin of anyone in the intensive care unit. They started bringing all the other nurses. Look at her. There's no bed sores. Nothing's breaking down. All this vitamin C, which strengthens the collagen, elastin, and everything in your skin. Wow. We haven't seen anyone with skin like this. You know, and she's 70 and everything's great, nothing's breaking down. Well, look. And so, once again, a little elevation of an, you know, slight pancreatitis, you know, coming up, a little itis, inflammation in the pancreas. Okay, it's the vitamins. Once again, it's got to be the vitamins. They're stressing the pancreas. Suspend the program. So they suspended it again, and my mom collapsed right back again. And the nurses were up in arms, ready to chase down the doctors now. Now they're on my side. Hey guys, we know this is working, and you're not going to, you know, you're not going to let up, we're not going to stop this. We're not going to stop this. So they stopped the program for 2 days. Amazing. My mom collapsed again. 20 minutes off the ventilator, they had to stop the weaning trial. So I went up to the doctors, and again, you know, I said, look, you have removed my mother's nutritional life support. I said, you removed her life support, nutritionally. Are you going to take responsibility for that? I mean, I made it really, you know, at this point there was nothing that was going to stop me. This is working, I can see it. The nurses are all behind it. And now, you've got to be a little lucky, I think, too. We had a great doctor, and I'd like to mention his name, who was very open-minded, and I will thank him for all my life, Dr. Kevin Tuhig. Some of you may know that name, a pulmonologist, a great pulmonologist at Yale. And he kind of took over, and he was intrigued because he was open-minded, he was into some supplements, nutrients, things like that. And he used to come by and said to me, Patrick, is it working? I said, hey, Kev. They would just Kev, you know, good Irish people, you know. I don't call anybody doctor. I don't want anybody to call me doctor either. Just Kev, you know, Patrick. And I said, Kev, it's working. It's working. Look, we've made this progress. We've gone from 2 days, now we're 3 weeks into this, and we're going to keep it. He said, fine. That's all I need to know. Now, I'll tell you just a couple more things about this. We added apple cider vinegar. Can you imagine that? I got apple cider vinegar. Okayed. I'm sure Paul Bragg, if you know that name, is turning over in his grave. Patricia Bragg, apple cider vinegar. And the nurses looked at me, apple cider vinegar? I said, look, apple cider vinegar, and I started talking about acetic acid, malic acid. I said, what do you clean your coffee pot out with? Vinegar. Isn't it put into window washes and things like that? Yeah. I said, well, let's wash out my mother. I mean, I just kind of visualize this from a circulation standpoint. These acids could go in and clean up the gunk in the body. And I believe that. I believed it then, and I believe it now, and I see it all the time. The magic of apple cider vinegar. By the way, it was one of Hippocrates' top choices, that and garlic. Not many people read Hippocrates, but he used it in his practice extensively, apple cider vinegar. The benefits of it, it's also adding acid that was missing in the stomach, and it's also wonderful for stabilizing blood sugar. Blood sugar stabilization is such a crucial component of survival in an ICU unit. So it all worked in that respect. And in fact, you know, I was conscious of this fluctuation because when you're on prednisone and steroid, it dysregulates your blood sugar levels. It can bounce all over the place, and it's crucial to control that. It's powerfully immunosuppressive not to have blood sugar controlled. That's why it's so crucial with cancer patients. You've got to have a blood sugar stabilization food plan, you know, to prevent excess tumor growth, which is another subject. So we got the vinegar going in, and now the nurses are calling me, oh, hello, Mr. Apple Cider Vinegar. I said, namaste, most honorable Nurse Mary. Namaste. Well, welcome, you know. Okay, so we tried a couple. We tried something called germanium. Has anyone ever heard of germanium? Wow, I'm impressed. Not many people have. I may have been the first one to use germanium in an ICU unit. It's a trace mineral. It has a crystal construction similar to a diamond, used in semiconductors, but it has a magnificent effect on the research I had read, Japan, Russia, for activating oxygen transfer between the cells. So I added germanium to it. Mom's doing great, very well, getting better. There are two more things I added. Garlic and onions. Garlic and onions. I didn't cook them. I didn't bring them. Now we're using a stomach feeding tube, by the way, which is a great advantage to have. Stomach feeding tubes are fantastic. Anytime anyone's in any critical care situation, you have someone at home, always ask for a feeding tube. You can do wonders with it. You can make all kinds of concoctions, mixed powders, capsules and things like that, and you can enhance the health of anyone dramatically by the use of stomach feeding tube, particularly if you have someone who can't swallow very well, aspiration risk, things of that nature. So we got Twin Labs capsules with garlic and onions. Garlic, onions, again, cleanse the system, natural antibiotics, anti-inflammatory, the quercetin in onions. There are so many nutrients, which we don't have time to go into, within these two. Now the nurses would open the capsules, but it was like concrete inside. So they had to push that stuff out, and it was like 2 little rocks would come out of the capsules. So they had to get a mortar and pestle and start, you know, like this. And you'd have this garlic aroma going through the ICU unit. It was amazing. You know, they're pounding away, pounding away, pounding away. That same doctor who had come by 2 weeks ago and said, "This looks like my wife's kitchen." He came by, garlic aromas going. I said, "What's going on here? My God." Okay. I'm going to tell you, you know, and when no one was looking, I was taking a little ginger, good for your digestion, inflammation, just putting it down my mom's mouth. Anytime you could use little ice cubes or things like that, you know, to wet the lips, I would put ginger with the ice, you know, tincture drops, very similar to, you know, drops like this, which is cayenne, which I always carry around. I'm going to talk about this in a minute, because this is one of the most amazing medicines on earth. I'll just leave it up here, cayenne. In my seminars with the nurses at Yale, I use cayenne all the time. We do the cayenne drink, just to give them an idea of, you know, therapeutic value and what it feels like. So here's what else we were doing. Okay, so we've got all this stuff in place, and we're making all these progress. Blood chemistry, my mom's off the ventilator. Wow, what a triumph. And during the course of this, you know, after about, let's say, week 10, when I knew my mom was going to make it, 10 days into this, when I knew my mom was going to make it, I said, we have to do other complementary, non-nutritional things in this ICU unit to enhance the healing experience. First, I wanted to make sure, I saw all the nurses talking to my mom when she was unconscious all the time. And I asked them, I said, "Do you think the patient can really hear you?" And she said, "Yeah, they might. They can hear them. Even though they're unconscious, subliminally and subconsciously and things like that, the patient can hear it." So we say, "Mrs. Moore, good morning, Florence, good morning, Mrs. Moore." I said, "Wonderful." So I plastered her whole room with pictures of her dog, with the names on it, all of her children, father, relatives, so the nurses could all learn and have a conversation with my mother about her dog Annie, nice golden retriever. You know, Annie says hi, and you know, and Karen says hi, and everything like that. So we had all that subliminal, you know, familiarity going on. I believed in music therapy, so I brought in these gigantic earphones, and even though my mom was unconscious, I mean, people would walk by and see this unconscious patient with these big things on their ear. And I had, so it was funny to look and say, "What's going on here?" Subliminal music. In addition to that, I know she loved Rodgers and Hammerstein. South Pacific, My Fair Lady, you name it. So I brought all those tapes in, and so I gave her a few hours of listening to music every day. So she could, you know, have something going on there. I also noticed that in the ICU unit, they come in with all these toxic cleansers. You can hardly breathe. Now here you have someone fighting for their life with a terrible respiratory condition, and she's breathing in all these fumes. And I was getting sick there, and I said, how are they supposed to breathe? Isn't all this chlorination, God knows what other chemicals you're using, is that good for someone's lungs to breathe in? So I got approval for a HEPA filter in her room. I went out and bought a big HEPA filter, you know, high efficiency, to bring it in and turn it on. Got approval from the down in the maintenance, and, you know, went through all the stuff like that. Then one of the interns, there was an intern who'd be doing the rounds all this time, and, you know, she used to come by. This is when we were desperate, before I got approval for this, and I could overhear when they're doing their rounds, "Oh, this lady's very sick. She really doesn't have much of a chance to live." They didn't know I was sitting inside the room. And anyway, this was a woman from Beijing, and I befriended her. I spent a year in China. My brother-in-law is Chinese, professor of social policy at one of the top university in Beijing, Harvard grad. So we had a nice relationship, talking all the time. She'd come by and visit me. "Oh, I'm so sorry, your mother's very sick." And I said, it turns out that her husband lived in the same neighborhood growing up as my brother-in-law. And he was a master acupuncturist from China. Didn't speak English very well. So I said, "Can you explain to him?" I said, "You know, I've been in China, I've had acupuncture, I believe in circulation, qi, and everything like that. Could you explain to him the situation? Blood, gas, oxygen flow, trying to activate energy in the cells. And could he put a regimen together for me, where I could hire him to come in and do acumassage right in the ICU unit?" So he came in and started doing an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, 7 days a week. rubbing my mom's tummy and doing all kinds of stuff, and things like that, and saying it's good for gases, putting things in her ear, and it was fantastic, and so we were working on that. Aromatherapy. I said, this place stinks, I'm going over the edge of the woods and I want to get some good aromatherapy and spray. So you can't do that today now. They're so concerned about any type of smell. So I started asking the nurses, what's your favorite flavor? Someone wants coconut, orange, but I want it to be natural, holistic, and things like that. So we started adding a little of that. Okay. Now my mom's in a wheelchair now. I mean, she's still very, very sick and extremely weak. And I said, okay, we're into 3.5 weeks of this now. I said, my mom's been sitting in this box of a room for so long, looking at 4 walls. There's no sunshine. There's no fresh air. I want to take my mom out. I said, well, your mom is just barely removed from a ventilator. You can't just take her out. I said, she needs to see people in the human race. I want her down in the atrium. You all know Yale. And so really, they didn't want to let me out. Well, she could pick up something, she could get this. I said, I'll wrap her up, put a HEPA thing on, get all the oxygen tanks, and I'm taking her down. She needs fresh air. She needs to know that there's a world beyond these 4 walls for stimulation. So I not only took her to the atrium, but I snuck her outside the hospital. I said, Mom, we're sunbathing. Sunbathing. You need to get the rays of the sun, the sunshine, for your brain chemistry, antidepressant. I didn't realize at that time the power of vitamin D. I knew it was good, but today, absolutely. If I had to do this protocol again, I would have massive doses of vitamin D. They never checked it, and many times they don't even today. So every day I started taking her out, into the sunshine, sunbathing. And exercise. How many people get workouts in the ICU unit? Okay. I said, as long as you're lying in bed, I developed all these leg exercises called gas pedal, scissors, and bicycle. I'd have my mom just push her feet against my hands, and we'd do sets of 25 over and over and over again. And I'd have her bicycle her legs, and I'd hold them in with resistance, resistance, resistance. And then I'd have her, legs in, legs out, and give the resistance, different exercises, because she's not going to be able to walk when she gets out of here. Just being in bed, you got to do exercise. And then range of motions with the arms, squeezing things, and I got 1 to 2 to 3 pound weight so she could be doing things. And I wouldn't let any of my family members visit unless they made a positive intervention and they did something. I said, if you're going to go visit, just don't sit there. It's nice to, make yourself useful. Exercise her. Give me a break, so I could rest a little. So I trained them all, and I said, every time you come in there, you're going to be doing something to get mom stronger. So we did lots of that. Writing materials. Of course, she'd been trached. She can't talk. So all this time to communicate pictures, writing, so we can have an interactive dialogue going on at the same time. So we were using all these interventions. Prayer. Okay. I happen to be raised in a Catholic family with 6 members who were in the clergy, 3 priests, 3 aunts, or nuns. I escaped, thank goodness, and so did my dad. Close call. Thank you, World War II. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. My dad went off and learned a little bit about life. So we had the Franciscan priest, Father Anthony, coming by, and so we had a nice spiritual. It was a good spiritual, just regardless of religion or anything like that, just a good spiritual going on. Another thing is, I think you can get an idea of my personality. I'm like a coach, like a pep talk person. Come on, Mom, you can do it. Come on, you're going to rally. This is a situation every day, over and over and over again. Positive reinforcement. We're going to do this. We're going to get out of here. You're tough. I said, Mom, remember you said to me, what do doctors know? Okay. Now again, I'm a lay person here, but I had a good feel for how the human body works, what natural medicine is all about. I've been studying it all the time, and I was almost prepared, and let's say nature, God ordained to be here at this given moment to make a difference. Okay, so things are progressing along and doing very well. The ICU nurses say, well, maybe in a couple of weeks we might be able to get you to the step-down unit, you know, pulmonary care. Your mother really needs to get stronger before we even think about letting her get out of the ICU unit. So I thought, okay, what's the next thing I can use and add to the formulary on my mom's protocol? The next thing was cayenne. And it was the most amazing, amazing, you know, every day we're getting all the lab work, we're watching all these albumin, all these markers changing, going up, improvement. I brought in cayenne capsules, and I said, you know, again, the nurse said, cayenne? What, are you putting red pepper down our lines? You know, because we're mixing things up all the time, you know, all these powders, and opening capsules, things like that. And now we have a nice red color, you know, going down her lines. It's amazing. Spices? We're not using spices in here? So what happened next was stunning. I had read a lot about cayenne and used it over the years. I read all the books I could on cayenne. I was fascinated with this herb and hot pepper and all of its therapeutic applications. I was fascinated that herbalists for centuries, when they were making a formula of different herbs, they would always add a drop of cayenne, because anything cayenne touches, it transports, enhances the transportation of a formula or herbs. So when I put that cayenne and started adding it, it was as if I threw a bucket of gasoline onto a fire. My mom, just everything, blood chemistry. I remember the nurse coming back saying, fantastic! What did we do? It just suddenly, everything got fantastic, better. It's as if it doubled the effectiveness of the orthomolecular protocols we had put in place. Everything got better so well. So the nurse said, look, I'm going to take a few days off, and I'll see you in a few days. We were gone when she came back. She said, where's Florence? It improved my mother's condition so rapidly, it just enhanced it. They said, oh, within 48 hours, like that, step down unit. So we're down now out of the ICU unit. Wow. So when you step down from an ICU unit and you have a protocol in place, what happens is sometimes the next department you're going down, they said, what is this? You know, my mom came down with this 15 different things on her sheets, and the nurses, and I said, okay, fine, look, I'll work out a deal with all you nurses. I'll be in here every day, and I'll open the 100 capsules. I'll mix them into, you know, your little plastic urine things, and I'll just leave them here, right here, securely. You know, so you don't have to do this and open all that kind of stuff, because it was hard to do. You know, I didn't have the glutamine powder, and that was 60 capsules alone of glutamine. Versus today, you know, you just get the powder, tablespoon in the morning, tablespoon very quick. So I would leave them there. We'd be doing, at this point, we changed the interventions and started to downgrade it, you know, to 3 times a day with these applications of nutrients. Make it easier. It's called TID. So my mom, you know, I knew this was going to be a long haul because my mom was in bad shape before the broken hip. She was in bad shape from all of this critical care, and so we were there for weeks in the in the pulmonary unit, but getting better all the time. From there, we got out of the hospital and went to rehab. In the rehab, I was there every day, every afternoon, and I said, if you're going to get better, we have to work on this. You cannot miss a dose, and you cannot miss an intervention at all in terms of exercise. So by this time, you know, during all this time, my manager in South Africa had been calling me, you know, when are you getting back here? You know, we're starting our new project with our marketing plan for the city of Durban. I was like, oh, wish I could be there. But I knew my fate had changed at that moment. And so we did our rehab, 3 months in rehab. And it was tough. It was very challenging, and I realized in rehab, you get 1 session a day a lot of times. And if the patient isn't feeling really good at that moment, you might end up with 3 minutes of exercise. It happens all the time. And they don't do it on weekends most of the time. So if you want to get better, you've got to be doing interventions 3 times a day, 7 days a week if you're really weak. And you've got to have somebody who's going to do it with you. So I ended up taking over and doing it and working with the physical therapist. And I saying, you know, it's not going to happen unless I'm here and doing it around the clock. Otherwise, we could be... And I knew when my mom came home, and she's on oxygen now. She's on oxygen, you know, 2.5 liters of oxygen. Because what happened, one of the collateral damages of having this situation in the ICU unit, they had used so much oxygen to push down in the ventilator, trying to force oxygen into the lungs, that it damaged a lot of her lung tissue, became pulmonary fibrosis. So doctor said, "Pulmonary, she got fibrosis on her lungs now. She didn't have it when she came in, now she's got it. So your mother's going to be on oxygen the rest of her life." And people who have these fibrosis tend to live maybe 2 to 3 years. It's basically terminal. And this is what I've learned. I see it time again. If anyone gives you any of these words, terminal, you have 6 months, throw it in the trash can. It is terminal if you follow only that advice, standard of care advice. If that's all you do, it's terminal. But I would always throw that word away because it's meaningless to me. That's when healing begins. If you really have someone who can show you the way, the pathway, and help you in your healing. So we got my mom back, and I won't go into all the stories because my dad was sick at that time too. It was really tough on me because the stress, whatever happened, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer at this time. So now I'm here taking a mother who's home, oxygen, and I had to feed her. She's still on stomach. She's still at risk of aspiration. So for 5 months I fed her, making up all these formulas, and the body just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So finally, she was able to swallow, and we could go back to food, which is really nice for her. And then I took care of my dad, and then and I said, that's it. I've got parents here in Connecticut. I didn't know anybody in this state, and this is my fate. And I'm glad that all that my parents did in my life, that this is an opportunity for me to take care of them and to give back. And also, I was thankful that I said, how many people get an opportunity to do what I did? I had never heard of it in the history of medicine, where you get to implement this dramatic program. And I applaud Yale-New Haven and the nurses and the selected doctors. I mean, I want to give them a lot of credit. The nurses backed the program when they saw it was working and supported it. They're the most open-minded people around, so the nurses I really applaud there. A couple of the doctors who backed the program too. And my mom would have had no chance without all the life support, the care, and everything like that, nothing. So the care was really good, and I applaud the people there at Yale for doing this. I mean, how many places can you, I'm not saying this happens for everyone, it obviously doesn't, but I just have to look back and be very grateful for a select few of doctors and the nurses who allowed me to implement this program and watch it and observe it clinically. It's remarkable to see what the power of the nutritional medicine was doing, what Dr. Atkins used to call the vitanutrient solution, and how you can measure it clinically and chemistry-wise and blood gas level-wise and oxygen. You could do all these parameters and document it, which was amazing. The idea that you could see that when they removed what I call nutritional life support, my mother collapsed. And we had the clinical evidence of it. When we brought it back, she went back up. When they removed it again, collapse. And the nurses, veteran ICU nurses, as I said before, no way we're stopping this. No way we're stopping. We know it's working. So that in itself, when we left the ICU unit, it really changed the attitudes there. A lot of people said, wow, we are now going to be more open-minded and not be as closed-minded. We can see that there's a value in keeping an open mind, and there are other ways that may be able to complement. And there were a few patients when we were in the step-down unit in pulmonary care, ICU nurses felt very attached to my mother, and they would come down and visit us all the time, and they felt really special. And they would say, oh God, we just let this patient do this now. We let him do this. So there was a good influence. And I was so pleased with these nurses. I mean, we really became good friends, that as a present I gave them each a book, an apple cider vinegar book. Signed Mr. Apple Cider Vinegar. So, my mom went 12 more years, and I will just say this, in reflecting on what I could have done better, looking back. Today is Vitamin D Awareness Day. It's the 5th year anniversary of Vitamin D Awareness Day. And to me, vitamin D is the most potent steroidal hormone nutritional intervention that anybody could undertake. And it I've left a page just, a little bit on vitamin. I know a lot of you know a lot about vitamin D, but I've never seen, out of everything I've ever used, hundreds of supplements, nutrients, getting your therapeutic level up with vitamin D can do so much and have such wonders for you. So, let me ask you this question to you. I mean, that's what I would have done with my mom. I would have had them not tested because I knew she was deficient. I don't need to test a senior citizen who's indoors year-round to know that she's not deficient. I mean, it's just obvious. And I would have given her 50,000 units every day for about a month. Okay? And anytime people try to scare you with vitamin D, I've been asking since the year 2007 in all my seminars, and anytime I'm around clinicians, practitioners, I ask this question. Because you're always going to hear, watch out for that vitamin D, kidney stones again, toxicity. It happens all the time when there's a winner in the world of natural medicine. People try to scare you. I've asked this question to all the practitioners in the hospitals at Yale, St. Graves. In your clinical experience, in your career, have you ever come across vitamin D toxicity? As people ask, in these seminars, what about? I said, anybody, patients with vitamin D toxicity, tell me. Now I'm up to 52, I count all the years. 10 nurses, sometimes I have 15 nurses in my seminars. You've been here 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and average is 200 to 250 years of clinical experience. So now I'm up, adding them up for 7 years, and all these people I've met, I'm up to 52,250 years of no one ever hearing or coming across toxicity. Doesn't mean it can't happen, because I do know of case studies, but it's Vitamin D Awareness Day, so I want to say a couple things about it, because it's such an important intervention for health. That's, I'm open for questions. Okay. If you have any questions, yes, sir.
I noticed your strategy when you were using vitamins, you were using the powder form. Isn't the solid form of any vitamin